Two queens on a coin. Sir Urien stood on the edge of the wall facing north. They were 2 weeks away from the first day of winter, and already the snow covered the fields in front of him and the city behind him down below. He tightened his cloak around his back and blew a cloud of foggy breath. On the top of the city walls, several men stood guard, but only one rider, Tom. He came in the middle of the night from a flight on his dragon and took a seat a few feet away from Urien's post as the dragon managed to lay his enormous body on the edge. He did not say a word except for a brief greeting and a vague explanation for a mysterious figure they saw running into the woods followed by a cat. "It's Angela, the herbalist. Do not worry about her, Sir Urien. She is more capable than she seems to be. Besides, her companion is also something else." Urien scratched the beard under his chin with clear concern in his expression. What sort of business a woman and her cat might have in a dark and frozen forest haunted by evil individuals, and who let her out after curfew? He would have a serious talk with the guards at the north gate. He watched the spot where the herbalist had disappeared just to know when she would be back, be she would not, which made him even more concerned. It was only when his shift was almost over after a night of silence and cold that Angela was seen coming out of the woods, unscathed. "See," Tom said with a beaming smile. "She is nothing but fine." Urien looked behind and all around her. "Where's the cat?" Tom frowned for an instant, but his kind smile came right back. "Doing what cats do best, I suppose. Going on adventures and then coming back as nothing has happened." It was not an explanation Sir Urien found satisfactory, but he accepted anyway. It was too early in the morning for the city of Sunon to look awaken, but it was late for him, who had been guarding the wall during the night. He walked toward the orange dragon and his rider. Tom seemed paralyzed in a sitting position, with his legs hanging from the edge. The dragon seemed as frozen as the man, looking to the horizon as if they were seeing something wonderful, his colors shimmering under the dim morning light. "I must go now, rider," he said in his typical raspy voice that sounded like a growl, which made the young man shake his head and turn his grey eyes to him. "Of course, Sir Urien. Thank you for your help." That lad was the politest person he had ever met, including the elves, members of the Order. He did not have to thank him for doing his work, but Tom did anyway. Urien tipped his head and went for the stairs. As his feet hit the boards of the wooden ladder, he felt as electric shocks were running through his legs. Such was the cold in his extremities. He rushed to go sit by the fire with a cup of mulled wine to warm his body. Heading to the tavern, Urien passed by some familiar faces and some newcomers, the citizens of Carver Hall and other parts of the Palancar Valley. It felt uncomfortable at first to have them there since Sunon and Carver Hall had conflicts that almost stopped the union of Lady Katrina and Lord Dane. After more than 2 weeks of their arrival, the tension seemed dissipated, mostly because they were all afraid of what was coming from the frozen north. And fear, as Urien had witnessed many times during his life, could work to separate or to bring people together. It was only a matter of perspective. He pushed the door open to see that it was empty. Not even the tavern keeper was in sight. Maybe she had gone to fetch more wood for the fire, he thought. So he made himself at home. He removed his gloves and went to sit by the fireplace. He stuffed the gloves inside his pocket and extended his hands toward the fire, feeling the heat tingling his skin. "Oh, hello there. How was the watch, Sir Urien? Any monsters that we should know of?" It was the keeper's high-pitched voice coming from the kitchen, followed by the unbelievable smell of warm bread. Essie was the daughter of the tavern's owners. They were old, so she was responsible for their business. She was married to a fisherman called Karth, that had been recruited by the Queen's army to fight in the south against the Surdans that threatened the kingdom's integrity. If it were other times, the Lord of Sunon would probably send Sir Urien in an act of good faith to serve the Queen and her interests, but he was needed in the north. "Good morning, Essie." "Nay, no monsters. Fetch me some mulled wine, will you? He turned to see her put the bread on his table and getting back to the counter so she could get him his wine. Where did you get this idea from? Essie let out a giggle and shrugged. It's what they say. Who says it? He grunted. Essie put the wine in a cup and placed it in front of him. People. She shrugged again. Urian scratched his dark beard and shook his head. People. Not the king consort, I imagine. Another giggle came out of her mouth as she shook her head. Don't say nonsense, sir. Of course Lord Murtagh would not say anything of this sort to me. We are just old friends who talk about life, not monsters, and how to fight them. The Sunon people knew that Murtagh would spend a good amount of time in the tavern in confidence with Essie, but all the other riders would as well. It caused an increase in Essie's business since everybody wanted to be near those men and women who were atypical, some weren't even human. I've seen her, Essie, the one they call a monster. And for as wicked as she looks, she is human. Not a monster, but an evil lady, that's what she is. To be honest, Urian was not so sure of that, because when she pursued him in the forest, she had a strange luminosity around her, and she could float. Her speed was something he had never seen before. Still, he was not ready to believe that she was more than an evil woman with incredible powers. Essie seemed satisfied with his answer, but curiosity was her most prominent trait, as Urian knew very well. As he ate, Essie pulled a chair near him and kept asking him questions. Who was on the watch with you? Urian knew that Essie had a fascination for everything magical, from spellcasters to riders and dragons. The word around town was that when she was a little girl, a magician saved her and her parents from a group of criminals, and since then she held a special interest in magic. She wished to know all there was to know about the riders and their skills. Sometimes he would see a longing in her eyes as she wished to become a rider herself. The orange one, he said with his mouth full. Lorgas. He's my favorite. Naturally, Tom was with him, right? Obviously. What was he doing? Did he practice magic while on the watch? I imagine that the riders must practice all the time, so they become the best spellcasters. Urian shoved a piece of bread in his mouth and decided that the heat coming from the fireplace wasn't worth the interrogation. He downed the wine, which in hindsight might have been a mistake, for it went down burning his insides, and stood up. He stared at nothing the whole time. They both did. Now, will you excuse me? I have to go rest, sure. I'll put it on your tab. It was the middle of the afternoon when Sir Urian exited his house after resting. He was ready to take on his duty once again. He rode his horse through the streets and went to all the watchtowers, checking for anything unusual. Everything was fine. He then headed to the north wall, where the builders worked on fortifying the city. In the middle of the construction site, he saw Rainier, so he called for him. The elf's platinum hair flung around his lean figure as he turned on his heels to look at him. His looks seemed out of a tale, something that Urian would listen described by his mother when he was young, something ethereal and magical. Greetings, Sir Urian. Ready to report last night's watch. The elf's northerner accent was odd, for all the other elves spoke in this particular way, rolling the artic s and rasping the estic s. It made Urian feel comfortable in his presence, though, for as strange as it sounded in the elf's voice. He nodded and dismounted. There was nothing that could raise concern, except for one occurrence. Angela, the herbalist, left the city limits in the middle of the night and went to the woods with her cat. She returned. The cat did not. Urian could almost see a shadow of a grin appearing in Rainier's face, but it faded away quickly. It made him shake the comfort away and feel a little bit annoyed, thinking the rider mocked him. The herbalist is unique. You should not worry about her. And her cat, Solimbum, is not a cat and is most likely all right. Was it a requirement to speak in riddles to become a rider? Sir Urian was at least irritated, but tried to keep his temper under control. I wish I could understand it. Rainier bent his head and turned to go back to his work, his hair swaying in the most magnificent way behind him. Sir Urian almost growled with the vagueness he had been treated and wished he had been sent south to fight on a real war. Arya sat in the chair next to Nasuada as Oric's ambassador explained his king's reasons not to join the war. He had been rambling for what it seemed hours, just for the annoyance of the human queen. At some point, Arya watched the way that her generals would glance at her expecting a reaction to the dwarf's words. Nasuada kept quiet, though, for everyone's disappointment, as Arya perceived with amusement. I am sure you can understand his reasons, your majesty. My king wishes success and intends to support your cause in many other ways, but he cannot fight by your side, for Serda had been a good business partner for many years now, and we are close neighbors with them. Arya looked to her side to see Nasuada raising her chin a little and giving the dwarf a cold smile. You are dismissed, then. This meeting is for allies only. The dwarf gulped and seemed to sink in his chair. Any messages to King Oric, your majesty? Not for now. You may leave. His little legs took him out of the room in a blink of an eye. When he exited, the 7 generals and 5 members of Nasuada's council started talking low among themselves, making fun of the dwarf's fearful look. Arya could hear it all, and although she thought those comments were mean, she also found them extremely humorous, but kept her face straight as she should. As the voices raised along with the laughter, Nasuada took the opportunity to talk to Arya. So, now that your army is about to arrive and Murtagh is expected to get here this afternoon, what are your plans? I will leave my ambassador, Vanya, to conduct the matters of war with you and go back to Elismera with my queen's guard. Murtagh will act as the Order's representative, and I expect you would treat him as so when he and Thorn have to decide on our behalf. Nasuada smiled. I will try to forget he is not my husband when he tries to apply the Order's code and pretend I am arguing with Eragon instead. That should be easy. Arguing with Eragon is so natural for both of us. The human queen laughed with immense joy, which made Arya want to join her. You are right. I wonder why that is. Nasuada's laughter died in her throat when the door was swung open by an exasperated young squire. Your Majesty. The king consort has arrived. He's been spotted flying fast to the castle just now. Her eyes gleamed with excitement. So soon. Go meet him and tell him to join us here. It was good so see Nasuada receiving good news at last. It had been some hard few weeks under siege, since Orin's army was relentless in keeping Bellatona sealed to the outside world. Her queen's guard could only enter the city with the help of Fernan. Arya hoped that her army would come soon to release them from the siege, attacking the Serdans by surprise on their rearguard. That was the plan she worked with Vanya just before he left, so he could pass it along to her commanders. It would work. It had to work, otherwise the people of Bellatona would perish with the lack of supplies and Nasuada would have to surrender the territory to Orin. Fernan, do you see them? Wait. It took a moment for Fernan to realize what she was asking, for he had been sleeping during the morning on his favorite spot, the terrace at the Lord's castle, after standing guard at night. I do. They were flying high to avoid any attacks, but now Thorn has landed on the castle's yard. You should see Murtagh in a minute. As soon as Murtagh entered the conference room, Arya knew he did not carry good news. His grey eyes were covered by a dark cloud, and the image of his wife well and safe did nothing to placate his concern. Nasuada stood up and asked, "What is it?" Murtagh opened his mouth to say it, but the sound of the horns shut him up. "I think you might want to see this, Arya." Arya and the others in the room stood as well and ran to the balcony to see what the Some were riding, some were running, but they were only 2/3 of what she expected, and the horns they heard were not the kingdoms, but Serdas who prepared to battle. Am I wrong, Fernan? Is there less than it was supposed to be? My eyes could betray me from that distance. She perceived Fernan flapping his wings to rise above the city and see with more clarity. You are right, my darling. I just wonder if Murtagh's concern is about our numbers as well or something else. Arya turned to Murtagh and Nasuada, who maintained a private conversation, to see them silence and look back at her. What happened? She asked and feared the answer. Murtogh took a deep breath and stepped forward until he grabbed her elbow and moved her away from the generals and council members. On the trip here, we flew over a horrible scene, Arya. A few miles north of Illyra, elves slaughtered in their sleep on a camping site. Hundreds of them. Some knifed on the back, some with their throats slit, but many magically killed. We increased the speed to arrive here as soon as possible and deliver this tragic news to you. I am so sorry, Arya's stomach sunk. To go over an elf's defense wards like that. Not everyone could kill an elf and go unpunished. Could it be that the dark magicians had come into the kingdom without the order anticipating it? Who did it? I don't know, but I think we are about to find out, he said with his consoling hand on her shoulder, then pointed at the elven army that approached, the survivors of a vicious attack. Certainly, her men would tell her who attacked them as soon as they made their way through Orin's forces. They all stood against the parapet. They were high enough in the castle to see when the Surdans prepared for the fight, with their soldiers lined up, swords and shields in hands, lances forward waiting to pierce some elven armors. As they approached, the elves increased their speed. Nasuada sent her generals to prepare as well, and they rushed out of the room and to take their posts. New horns sounded, kingdom horns this time. The archers already had taken their positions on the wall, any minute now. Arya's soldiers would sweep the enemies as they were fallen leaves in a hurricane. Or at least it was what she hoped for. The sound of their advance was deafening. It seemed like an eternity, but when they finally met on the battlefield, instead of swords clashing against shields, Arya saw another image. The Surdans raised their lances and opened a corridor. A long and welcoming corridor, as they were embracing an old friend. The elves passed through, and at the end of it, they were received by Orin and his cavalry. Received as heroes, Arya's army was not hers anymore, it was Orin's. An enraged roar could be heard for miles as Fernan spat fire to the sky. Arya did not expect to be dethroned so far away from home. She did not expect to be betrayed in a war that wasn't even hers. Her heart was beating so loud in her ears that the world became mute. Her sight went dim and she felt like fainting. She felt a hand grabbing her shoulder and a voice telling her, "Run. You hear me. Go now. Take Nasuada as fast as you can and go now." Arya wanted to sit down and understand it all, but Murtogh kept shaking her shoulder, telling her to move. She could not. Could she so? When did her Queen's Guard arrive with her belongings? When did Fernan land on the terrace so she could climb on him? How was she flying north with Nasuada, safely attached to the saddle bindings in front of her? All the power she had was suddenly gone, and there was nothing for her to do now but to flee. It is all right, my darling. We will figure this out. You're still the Queen, and I am sure that your supporters are anxiously waiting for you in Elismera. My supporters are dead, Fernan. Didn't you hear, Murtogh? They were killed, not all of them. There's Deathada, remember. He will assist you, as always. Arya grabbed the sides of the saddle with too much strength, thinking what could have happened to Deathada or Vanya. She wondered if Vanya was one of those killed by the traitors, and a nauseating pain came to her chest. Yes, now it made sense. An army of traitors marched south to join the forces of another traitor. Where are we going? She asked him. Illyra, then Mount Anga. Anga. No, we can't go there. Take me to Elismera. Fernan, you need to recollect, Arya. I am taking you to Mount Anga. You like it or not? No. You just said, they are waiting for me. I must go to Elismera. I meant you have people there that can help you hold your crown. But right now it seems the whole land intends to kill you, so I won't just watch them do it. We are going to Anga. Then, when we know it's safe, we can go back. Arg, Arya grunted, which made Nasuada look back at her. Arya realized that because of her Nasuada had just lost Bellatona to Orin and possibly the war. Nasuada was also worried about her crown, but she did not have the choice of sacrificing herself for the cause. She had a child to deliver, a future to contemplate. Arya, on the other hand, hesitated to escape. Like two sides of the same coin, the two queens fell together into the traps of men.